Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel BethChatsBooks. Now today's video is going to be a tag video. I'm going to do my no disclaimers book tag. Now before I get into that book tag, I just wanted to do a little mini rave about my mum and her knitting. So if you have me on Instagram, you'll have seen that I did a post recently about being quite hungover last week. And just as I wanted to die on the sofa, my mum popped round and she made me this jumper. And how cute is it? It's really like baggy and comfy, and she made one for my sister because my sister's going to Budapest this weekend and I felt jealous, so I wanted one. So she brought it round this weekend and it smells like charity shops and musty smell, and you know, from the wool shop she got it from, and it's just so comfy and amazing, and I basically haven't taken it off since I got it. But I just wanted to do a little rave to her, like how cool is that my mum has made me an actual jumper. So anyway, aside from that, I'm now going to get into the no disclaimers book tag. Now the original creator of this tag was Catalyst Reads, and I'm going to link his original video down below, but he is an amazing booktuber. We've recently reconnected. He reached out to my channel when I first started. He's so lovely. He does really interesting discussion videos. He's got a really diverse range of reading and he's a fantastic guy. He's an American booktuber, so I'll link him down below. Please go check out that video and go check him out because he's great. But I got tagged in it by Shazza from Hooked on Books. So again, I love her. I rave about her all the time. She was in my small booktuber shout out. She is definitely somebody I consider now a booktube friend. We laugh, we comment on each other's videos extensively. I think she's so cool. I love the intros of her videos. So I'm going to link her channel down below and her version of this tag. Go check her out. She is amazing. She's an Irish booktuber. She's hilarious. I have so much love for her. I have a girl crush on her. She's absolutely amazing. She's a bookseller as well, so that's also amazing. Just go check her out. And that's all I have to say. So I'm going to do question number 1. If I look over here occasionally, it's because I've kind of got the questions propped up and I couldn't remember them, so I wrote them down. So question number 1. Which tropes in books annoy you the most? I have to say the most annoying and obvious trope that gets used a lot is a very cliche romantic trope, which really pisses me off, and they use it in YA and they use it in romance novels, and this is why I don't think I'm a major fan of them. And that is that this woman is on a journey of self-discovery in a book, and then the minute a piece of male ass comes along, she loses all sense of self. Her personality just becomes like a wet lettuce, or dribbly and horrible. She obsesses over the person, and then we lose the entire plot and focus of her self-discovery. It becomes an infatuation with that person. That person messes her around, wastes so much time. 2 perfect examples, and one I've never read, but one I'm certainly never going to read, is the first one is the Twilight series. Why on earth in New Moon did we have to spend half the friggin' book, and it really was half, of he's not here and I'm still lonely without him, like how can I breathe, how can I live? And then it would literally go on for about 6 weeks of that, just telling you the date and then the same kind of passage. It was ridiculous. I hated that series anyway because I thought she had no stability as a character. But to be up and down like a fiddler's elbow with your partner and to get no development from her when he's absent in the book is just ridiculous. And then the second one is 50 Shades of Grey. Now I will not read this because everybody seems to think I don't like it because it's me being a prude. I have no problem with talking about sex. If you want to talk about sex in a book, go ahead. Kudos to you, that's amazing. But when you are blatantly trying to sell something as sexy that to me is an abusive, psychologically and physically abusive relationship, and you're trying to tell me he's a sex god. I've listened to a lot of podcasts about it, and people say how she's got this inner person that just takes over, and that he kind of forces her to do these situations and she screams out, her stop word, and he carries on and all this other stuff, and that makes me really uncomfortable because that's not BDSM to me, and that's not a healthy relationship about sex. That to me is very abusive psychologically and emotionally, and I will not stand for that. And everyone seems to think that this is a really romantic book, but her character relies entirely on every decision he makes and she runs after him for all the book, I've been told. I watched the first film and it repulsed me because it was just dripping with just a horrific way that he treats her, and the fact that everyone thinks this is kinky and sexy and they sell these films at Valentine's Day just makes me want to vom. I just think it's ridiculous and it's ugly, it's horrible. So yeah, tropes like that when women are dependent on men in books really, really does piss me off. No. And then question number 2, Which writer or writers do you feel are overhyped or overrated? Ooh, this is going to be a bit controversial. So one, I want to say I've only read one book from her, but that's Gillian Flynn, and I read Gone Girl. I hated that book. I really felt like I hated the characters, I hated the way it was going, I didn't find it thriller-esque. They were two very twisted individuals who were going to new lengths to screw each other over, and there was nothing intriguing about that. That was just dark, and these were just dark people. It wasn't great for me. And this is going to sound really controversial, and I don't mean it in the sense that this is a bad author, but a bad writer, I personally think, is J.K. Rowling. Now, a lot of people think she's amazing, and I've only read the Harry Potter series and the Cursed Child play. But her writing is very basic, obviously, because it's for children. But people bigged up her importance so much that people describe her like they do Shakespeare. People have even quoted she's going to be our classic of our generation. You know, she's going to be the major classical writer. However, when you read her books, they aren't written very well. They're written basically for children, and so it's accessible to them. And I think she's an amazing storyteller. She's amazing at character development. But as a writer, she doesn't really float my boat, because I'm into a lot of literary fiction, a lot of classics. So of course I love reading Harry Potter because it's a comfort, but I don't read it because I think that her description and her writing style is amazing. So I'm sorry if that's upset a lot of people, but that's how I've always felt about J.K. Rowling. So I've always been a bit hesitant to overhype her, because I merit a lot of authors that I love based on their writing quality as well. And then question number 3. What are your least favourite books you've read since joining BookTube? Now, one major one is The Shack. Now, I read that when I first started. My sister had a copy of it. I've even forgotten who wrote it, which is really bad. But when I first joined BookTube, my sister had a copy. She was like, oh, read it, it's really, really good. It made me feel all these different things. I thought it was crap. It was really unbelievable. I'm not big into religious kind of books, and this was one of those books that wants to sell you religion, that when your life is crappy, religion will solve it, you'll find yourself. I hated that it just didn't go into the bits that I wanted. It had this thriller kind of beginning where the daughter goes missing and he wants to try and find her, and then it went into this blurry passage of Jesus is a black woman and all these other people. There were all these weird characters of religious figures who come and talk to him, and they have a weekend in this cabin. It's just ridiculous, and I just really, really hated it. I haven't had really bad books since I started. A lot of books that I've hated are from years ago, like things like The Twilight and things that, you know, was young Beth's problem. So that was probably the major one that I've absolutely hated and raved about hating. So question number 4. A terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book. I had a few issues with The Life of Pi by Jan Martel, and the only reason is that was kind of like the ending, but the first half of the book was really interesting about his development with his family and living in India and all the cultural things that were just like, yes, 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 I love this. And the second half of the book deals with a character just deserted on the sea and hallucinating that the people that he's with are animals, and you know, spoilers, but come on, everyone's watched the film at least if they haven't read the book. It's not really got a satisfying ending at the end. It was very believable that you knew that obviously these animals weren't real and they were figures of other characters, and it was about his trauma, but there wasn't a development. Trauma bit was interesting, and the India setting was interesting, but the big block and the kind of end to the middle of the end, it's just really disappointing. So I guess that's the best example I can think of off the top of my head, where I just wish that bit had been cut out, but obviously that's the whole point of the book, that coping deserted on the sea, but deserted on the sea kind of storylines really don't float my boat. And question number 5, which fictional characters do you wish were not killed off? Well, I personally wish Snape was never killed off in Harry Potter, just because he's one of my favourite characters of all time. Near the end, when he does die and Harry retrieves his memories and hears how besotted he was with Harry's mother, it's just beautiful, it's really heartbreaking, and that to me is a really strong kind of love story. I hate when Beth dies in Little Women every time it gets me, whether it's an adaptation or the actual book. I was named after Beth from Little Women because my mum loved that storyline and she thought Beth was such a sweet character. So I'm really upset when she dies. I get really sad in Wuthering Heights when Kathy dies as well, because is it Edmund or Edward? Someone correct me in the comments down below. I always want to say the wrong one. I think it's Edmund who's with Cathy, and when she dies he's so heartbroken, and Heathcliff's trying to run in and get the last few kisses from Cathy before she dies, and she's a shell of who she was, and you know, she was this firecracker. That's always really sad when she dies as well. So there are a few of the characters that every time kind of gets you in the feels. Question number 6. What are some of your bookish pet peeves? One of my bookish pet peeves is when I'm reading a book and somebody tries to talk to me, especially if I'm in a really juicy bit, and then they kind of look at you very disgruntled, like, why would you not answer them? But you're thinking in your head, just let me get to the chapter. You know, I set myself little goals, like, let me get to the bit where there's a break for a new paragraph, or at the end of the chapter if I'm 2 pages away. And I kind of rush myself to get to that bit, and if someone's talking to me, that always really irritates me. One of my own pet peeves of myself is when I'm in a situation where I have to wait a lot for something and I haven't brought a book with me. It always irritates me. I need to have it on hand with me. So, for example, the other day I went round to my dad's for tea and I forgot to bring a book, and he ended up watching Liverpool for hours, and that's when I get my book out. That's when I spend a bit of time. I hate when people dog ear the corners of books as well. I hate that. I always have to have a bookmark. I just feel like you're defacing it. Also, I have a real issue with, I don't mind people annotating books, but I have this weird issue now because at school I used to write in pen, and I had a teacher in front of the entire class kind of let rip about me defacing the book in pen and how it's part of the school and you do not deface this book. Now I have a real issue with seeing anybody write notes in pen in a book. But I also hate when books are wet and the pages start crimpling. I hate when they get squashed in bags. Any kind of book damage really upsets me. Also, I hate, if you've got a cat like me, I hate when you're reading a book and they start headbutting the book and then the book flies out of your hands. If you have a cat, you'll know what I mean. They headbutt it, they run their teeth along the edges of your book. They just get in your general way when you're trying to read. They sit on you when you're trying to read so that they obstruct your view of the book. Cats are little beeps, you know? They get all in your way and they ruin your reading experience. So yeah, don't have a cat when you're reading. Or if you do, just lock it out, because they get jealous of your books. The jealousy is real. Number 7, what are some books you feel should have more recognition? I read 2 really interesting books last year. One was Traplines by Eden Robinson. The other one was A Complicated Kindness by Miriam Towers. I always say that wrong. But those 2 books were very, very interesting to me. So Traplines was 4 little stories. They deal with abuse, neglect, bullying from these characters, quite dark psychological things. But the 4 different stories that deal with these different situations, and I remember them very vividly in my head. Children that their parents are neglectful and their son starts a relationship with the teacher because that's the only person that shows them any affection. There's one where a cousin comes to stay and he psychologically bullies the younger kid for a really long time, and we see how that gets to a boiling point. I found them fascinating. It was a really short book, but I found the stories really interesting and I never heard anybody talk about them. I just found them for going on a website and looking at famous Canadian authors. But I really, really enjoyed that, and it would be nice if other people read books that aren't necessarily contemporary anymore, that are 22 years old, that are 30 years old, and a resurgence of older literature coming back and rehyping about. Then A Complicated Kindness was really interesting because it kind of deals with a community in Canada that was very similar to like an Amish community. In this community, her mum and her sister had been excommunicated for trying to be normal. They didn't like this community, and her dad was too much of a chicken to leave the community. She was dealing with this, and she was also questioning whether she wanted to be part of the community. So it was really rich of these kind of psychological layers, which I really like in books. And I'd never heard anybody talk about it. Only recently, I think I heard Mercy over at Mercy's Bookish Musings talk about Miriam Towers' other book and how she didn't really get on with that, but I'd never heard either of these names be described by anybody on BookTube. But I thought they were really great books. So I'll link them down below if you want to go read a synopsis and check them out. Question number 8. What are your thoughts on censorship and banning books? My immediate thought on that is that I find it fascinating that communities censor and ban books. I find it really interesting why they ban a book, what seems to upset them. So I found it fascinating why people find these things, even now or past books or contemporary books, why they find an issue with them. Personally, I don't think any books should be banned. I think the whole point is that people should be able to read what they want. I think there should be a point if there is a book that is dangerous, if it is from somebody who is warped, who is writing something that's deeply disturbing for no purpose than to get a reaction. But there are a couple of examples like Lolita. I don't think Lolita should be banned. I know some people can't stomach the plotline, some people really don't like it. Obviously it's dealing with somebody who is kind of having a sexual relationship with an underage girl. He's in his late 30s, so it's very controversial. But it is a literary classic. I think things like Fahrenheit 451 should never have been banned. These dystopian texts that have been banned because they deal with an alternative world in which it's kind of unnerving for us because it's not a whole jump, skip and a leap beyond where we are now. Obviously, people should be reading books that are age appropriate, but personally, I don't think anything should be banned because it always gives us a more holistic and well-rounded view of the way that the world is. We should be presenting a non-biased depiction of everything that we see in the media. Obviously, things that are really horrific, we shouldn't be condoning them, but I think we still need to have that humanitarian view that people need to express these things, or we need to allow them to express, so that we can find a root of a problem and solve it. You know, a lot of the times we want to condemn murderers and criminals for being sick individuals, but we take no culpability or responsibility for their upbringing, their lack of care, their abuse. So in a nutshell, I really am not for censorship of books. I think books inform, educate and enhance human nature and our ability to empathise. So I think it's so important that we don't censor these things and that we allow our children to grow up in a world that is more holistic than ever before. But that was my no disclaimers book tag. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit subscribe if you want to be alerted from when my next videos are coming out. I have another tag video, Beth's Brewtime Babble, and I have 2 book hauls. I'm going to split them into part 1 and 2 that I got in February because my book depository books came, so I'm really excited for that. But I'll see you very soon with another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.